Okay, this afternoon I'm here with Mike Camp from Propello. Welcome, Mike.
Cheers. No, appreciate you spending the time and allowing me to share some insights.
Thank you very much for coming along. Um, we're going to take about 15 or 20 minutes to dig a little bit into your background and into the company and where you're going. But I just wanted to start by just asking, what is it that Propello does, and just gives a little bit of a history of where you've come from.
Of course, yeah. So Propello is a white label loyalty platform. To give you some examples, we power loyalty and reward programs for people or brands, should I say, like JD Sports Gyms, Rated People. We work with HelloFresh as well, not just in the UK, but globally. And fundamentally, we enable our clients to create reward-driven, reward-centric loyalty programs that not just build value for the customer, but also reward them for when they conduct specific desirable commercial actions. And in terms of where we came from, we like I suppose many businesses, particularly in the sort of SaaS area, we spun out of quite a well-established integrated agency in the Ribble Valley, a company called Workhouse. And we were developed really as a pilot in answer to a specific client brief, probably around 2018, and then launched fully in 2020. In the January, and obviously COVID hit a couple of months later, and what a time to launch a business. But thankfully, we're still here, and we've done all right in the fairly short space of time.
Brilliant. So talking to COVID, were there any business changes that you considered that COVID-19 made an absolute necessity for you?
The obvious one is remote working.
Yeah.
I suppose anyone that used Microsoft 365 kind of wondered what that purple icon was at the bottom of the screen. And we made the move over to Teams, and that's been integral really in conducting our business. But one of the major benefits, if there are some benefits of COVID, is it leveled the playing field. So, previously where it may have been more difficult to speak to a large enterprise organization, who are our target audience, it made those conversations much easier because it's just myself and somebody else talking in their living room or their spare bedroom or whatever. And aside from that, I think there was a huge benefit in terms of work-life balance, but obviously welcoming the back of it now, and what we're now moving towards more of a hybrid approach when it comes to working. And we've just recently opened some office space in the centre of Manchester.
Okay. Well, I've seen a couple of posts that you've shared on LinkedIn for developers and different members for your team. What are your thoughts on the current sort of employment situation up here in the Northwest?
It depends on the role. We're recruiting for 6 roles at the moment, and it's kind of a feast or famine scenario. We're either inundated with applicants, and there's been some great applicants, don't get me wrong, but I think the more senior applicants or the more niche applicants are probably more motivated to stay where they're at right now, given the challenges in the economy and potential risks of moving somewhere else. So it's a bit of a mixed bag, really. It's not always easy to find the talent that you need, and I guess come back to your earlier point. The fact that we operate in a hybrid fashion means that we can expand the borders a little bit beyond the Northwest, but it's still an important factor for us to hire locally because of the whole cultural factor and meeting up, and it's great to boost the economy as well of your doorstep, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, I work with a couple of software companies, and one of the major challenges for them in their particular environment is finding people with the right level of expertise or in a very niche area of the market. And developers in that marketplace are quite expensive, I believe.
Yeah, not cheap. And don't get me wrong, there are other solutions, and you can look overseas, and you can nurture and develop talent. But it's a fairly expensive cost and the sort of staff budget line. But something that we went into this business with our eyes open, and hopefully we can attract the right talent because of the sort of path we're headed on.
Yeah, and attracting the right talent is one thing. Obviously, retention is equally important in today's marketplace, given that the actual cost of attracting and getting that new talent is expensive. What sort of things do you do as a business to retain the team that you've got? And do you have a good retention rate?
We do. It's a great question. We've never lost anyone yet, which is great. One of the most important things for me really early on was to develop an inclusive environment. So, not just to the point where they feel part of the business and can echo their thoughts, but we I suppose encourage freedom of speech. But in tandem with that, one of the things that we wanted to implement really early on was an EMI scheme. So having the ability for team members to subscribe to the EMI so that if the business succeeds, they succeed fundamentally.
Yeah. Now I know we've spoken earlier, you're a great advocate of coaching anyway.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that you've got some of your team going through a coaching program. How does that help with retention and development?
Massively, but not just staff retention, but customer retention as well. That's key, isn't it? Really early on, and when we were a 1-2 person business, we brought in a non-exec, and it's expensive at that stage.
Yeah.
But without that non-exec, who really was one of our first coaches, if you will, we really wouldn't be here. And then beyond there, we expanded in terms of, we need more specialist finance support. So again, we brought in a part-time CFO, again, fundamental in getting us to where we've got to. And then more recently, I'd say in the past 12 months, we implemented sales coaching, not just sales, but sales and customer success. So an outside third party where there's sort of no biases, and they can just look at, watch all of our calls and just really give helpful feedback to the team around how we can improve things and how we can continue to build on the successes that we're having. So I would advise anybody that's not looking at coaching to adopt that really early on. And if you don't adopt it externally, then make sure it's part of your culture.
I think different people need different things from coaching, don't they? For some people it's education, but for a lot of people it's just having that opportunity to have somebody with that helicopter view of the business. And when you're locked in the business, sometimes you don't see the wood for the trees. So it's important to have somebody with that outside perspective as well, I think, sometimes.
Yeah, I think accountability is a big thing as well. If especially in the early stages, it's very easy to sort of go off track and potentially not live up to the numbers that you've forecast and be a little bit demotivated. So accountability is a huge one as well in the early stages, I'd say.
Yeah. Now, I know you've been really busy over the last 12 months or so. You've gone through a rebrand from Perx to Propello. You've also gone through a fundraise as well to manage the continued expansion of Propello as well. Can you talk to us a little bit about what the thinking was behind the rebranding and the fundraise?
Yeah, so Perx Rewards, it was a bit of a one-trick pony, really. And over the course of our journey, clients often ask for new products and features, and the brand really just didn't allow us to scale past that. So the rebrand to Propello is all about growth, propelling our clients forward, and underneath that brand then houses a suite of loyalty tools and a platform really that helps our clients drive customer retention, acquisition, and increase conversions.
Okay. And when you think forwards, what are your aspirations for the company over the next 4 or 5 years?
Well, given we've been through a fundraise, it's very clear we've been through that with a fine-tooth comb, and investors expect that. So we would be delighted if we could execute against the plan. And the plan is, we're what, 4.5 years away from it now, and that plan is 10 million ARR. A team of somewhere in the region of 40 to 50 people with certain elements of globalization as well. And we do operate programs right now globally for brands such as HelloFresh, but building on that and capitalizing on some of the opportunities, particularly in the US and Canada, is of real keen interest for us.
Okay. What would you say have been your biggest learnings since you became an employer, since you began in business?
I don't know if it's necessarily a learning, but there's very conscious that your people are your greatest asset. So looking after the team and ensuring that we are encouraging freedom of speech and opinion. It's one thing we really, really encourage is debate. Sometimes it sounds like an argument. It's not. It's healthy debate. And secondary to that was that inclusiveness in terms of the MI. So as I say, not necessarily learnings, but certainly things that we were very clear that we wanted to put in place from the off.
Yeah. I think there's a great book by a guy called Patrick Lencioni called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And in that he talks about one of the areas being trust, that you can trust people not to agree with you, to have that healthy debate without it being personal. It's just, it's for the sake of the good of the company and the team moving forward. So you've got to have that tension within a team. If you've got yes men everywhere, then you're not going to get very far very quickly, are you?
Yeah, absolutely.
A couple of quick fire questions just before we finish then. Do you have any advice for your 18-year-old self?
I've got no regrets really. So everything is a learning curve, isn't it? I think the only thing I would say is don't be afraid to make mistakes. I think early on you're very keen to never put a foot wrong, and sometimes that can create a bit of trepidation in trying things. And the greatest learnings you make are by making mistakes. So certainly don't just dive into it gung ho. Do your research, but don't be afraid to fail a little bit, because the product and the person that comes out of it are infinitely better.
Brilliant. And apart from yourself, who's the first person that comes to mind when you think about success?
Well, not myself yet. Branson, but from an aspirational perspective, it's probably a little bit out of reach. In the SaaS world, there's a guy called Dan Martell, who's has created successes out of failures. He runs an amazing coaching academy actually for SaaS-based businesses over in the US. We work with some great angels. I think I've got to admire the journey that they've been on, and it's not just once. Many of them have been serial entrepreneurs who have built and sold businesses. And I suppose sort of on a more realistic level, those are the people that I admire more than those that the media put on a pedestal.
And are there any particular books or podcasts or videos that you'd recommend for people who are on a similar journey?
There are loads. Reid Hoffman does a great podcast, How I Built This, I think it is. Guy Raz as well. I can't remember the name of that one, but that's a great podcast. Is it Jake Humphrey as well? High performing podcast. Yeah, that's brilliant. And then there's a guy called Jason Lemkin as well in the SaaS world. Again, really, really great content that's kind of digestible and actionable as well, having listened to other people's stories.
Yeah, we've been fortunate enough to have Jake Humphrey and Damien Hughes actually on stage at our event. Doing the High Performance podcast live, interviewing our founder Brad Sugars, and also I've been to see him at their events as well. Amazing. So I'm definitely a subscriber to that podcast.
I don't know if you listened to the Tyson Fury one recently. That was pretty gripping, really, and the journey obviously that he's been on was phenomenal, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. How do people find you, Mark, and find out more about Propello?
Yeah, PropelloCloud.com is probably the easiest way to find us, or yeah, just jump on LinkedIn, look for myself, Mark Camp, and obviously, yeah, the business name is Propello Cloud, and always happy to have a conversation.
Brilliant. Mark, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Cheers, Paul. Appreciate that.